Okay. Now, in the previous talk, I said you can have validation scripts. Now I want to explain you what validation scripts look like, what they can do, and partly what they can't. So, again, a reminder that glidings are just standards with the grid jobs. So it's all condor. So glideinWMS is just there to make life easier by automating the submission. Maxime, we're starting. So, reminder what the gliding startup does, which is the thing that actually starts up the gliding. We will download the scripts, parameters called the binaries, run the scripts in order, and do a final cleanups. And there will be two types of scripts that will be run. There is a bunch of scripts that do node validation, and if any of those fails, Condor will not be started. It will stop there, Condor is not started, jobs are never started, game over. And then there are some scripts that do the configuration and startup, and once Condor starts, glideinWMS is out of the way. It's all Condor land from that point on. So as a consequence, if a validation script finds a bad worker node, Condor will not be started, and no user job will ever fail here. So if you care about your users, make sure that you find all the bad worker nodes, because you don't want users to fail. And this is the way to do it. So is it failing actually a good idea? Well, it is a good idea in the sense that users really like it because no user job will ever land on a broken node if your test is properly written. And all the failures will be logged. So the factory admins can actually see what's going on and react to it. For example, opening tickets with sites, follow up, making sure those worker nodes are fixed. So you keep up the efficiency of the site. Now there are some limitations. The validation scripts really only run the gliding startup. So if a worker node breaks afterwards, you will still get the problems in user hands. You can use the Condor clone-like capabilities. It was called Hawkeye some time ago, where you periodically run some tests, advertise in the class ads, and use for the match expression. But that's not really something the glidings help you with. But you can consider it's an idea. Or you may even want consider doing it in the wrapper, although that's not really equivalent. That's really what you can do if you experience that it happens more often than you would like, that a gliding starts, passes all the validation, then something goes wrong. Should not happen that often, but if you think it's more often than you want, this is definitely a way. And if there is a lot of people asking, we may actually make it easier to do it in the front-end config itself. Right now, you're on your own, essentially. There are, of course, some disadvantages of doing it. Every time you fail validation, you have wasted some CPU, because you just fail and gliding will wait for 20 minutes and then go away. 20 minutes is for the black hole detection. And this is especially problematic if you're really aggressive with validation. So the fact that one of your validation scripts failed doesn't mean that no jobs could potentially run that. It's just that some jobs may not run there. So you can fine-tune this and really just fail on the worst offenders. And for everybody else, you just tweak the Condor configuration in such a way that it will only fetch the jobs that can actually run there. The side effect of that is that you may get glidings that start and not run any jobs and go away, wasting even more time. But it's a reasonable trade-off if you have a large fraction of jobs, large fraction of glidings that may actually benefit from them. But again, it's up to you. glideinWMS doesn't really help you there, but it's possible. Now, what is a validation script? The first approximation is any executable. Anything you want can be your validation script. There are absolutely no restrictions. As long as it can run on the worker node, it's a valid validation script. And the fact that I usually call them scripts doesn't mean that they have to be scripts. They can be binaries, compiled binaries. Just as fine. And the exit code is important. If it exits with 0, it says if it exits with something that's not 0, it's a failure. And anything that is not 0, it's equivalent. It's a failure. So you can really put whatever you want. However, you may want to do more than just run and fail. You probably want some input and get some output. And both are handled through the dashboard file, which is the name of the dashboard file is the only argument you really get to your executable or your script. So your script is called the name of the script, name of the dashboard file. And let me explain what the dashboard file is. So the dashboard file is really just a simple list of key value pairs where you have one key value pair per line and they're space separated. So the key cannot contain a space, and you cannot have a new line neither in the key nor in the value, which is a reasonable restriction in my opinion. And you can actually add comments with a hash. Not that anybody will ever read them, but you can put them.
So you can't have spaces in the values either, correct?
You can.
Or you can? Okay.
It's better that if you don't, because a lot of default scripts assume that there are no spaces in the value. But if that attribute is only used by you, you can make your parsing more complex and actually have spaces and still live with them.
All right.
But yeah, it's recommended not to.
Okay.
And this is an example dashboard file. Really nothing fancy. And you have more than one space now, not just one. So now you have the name of the dashboard file because it's the first argument and the only argument you get when it's run on the glidin. And all you need is just get it out. So for example, here is a simple use of awk to look for a key called bin and this assumes that there is no space in the value, read it out. And if if this is empty, it means I haven't found it. And I may access it. Just a very simple, basic use of the dashboard. Similarly, you can write into the dashboard file. And it's nothing fancy, it's just a file, so just append to it. This of course assumes that you don't have already something with the same name in the dashboard file. It's just a file, so you can do with it whatever you want. And if you use something like this to extract it, and you write it twice, this will screw you up big time. Because awk will return both values, and you may not be able to process them correctly. So the glideinWMS actually provides you with some help. As long as you use bash. If you write your own binary, it's up to you to write it. But if you use bash, the glideinWMS actually provides a function called addConfigLine, where you pass the key and value, and it will actually strip out any old keys with this name and add a line that says your exact job true in this case. And in order to get access to this one, to this function, you have to source a file which is pointed at in the dashboard file. It's called addConfigLine source. So this is the way I would really recommend you add any attributes to the dashboard file, because you are guaranteed in this way that you have no duplicates of this key. You're not required to, but it's good practice. Now, something that Todd asked is, how do I get things into the condor config? Whatever, by default, whatever you put in the dashboard file is just for information exchange between different scripts. It will not automatically go into the condor config. So you can write all kind of crap in the dashboard file if you want, and don't be worried about any real side effects. At least not in condor. If you want something to go into condor, you also need to make a separate step to write into a whitelist file called the condor vars file that contains the names of all the keys that will be extracted from the dashboard file and put in the condor config just before condor is started. And again, to make sure that you don't have duplicates, in the same source file, you have add condor vars line that will help you make sure that you don't have any repeated keys in it. Because if you do, glideinWMS will really get screwed up. It expects there are no duplicates. So what's in the condor vars file? Again, it's similar to the dashboard file with one line per key. However, it's not a simple key value pair or a simple key pair. It's a list of keys. It's more complicated than that. It has 7 fields. The first one is the key proper. The second one is the type of the key, so we know how to put it in the condor config file. And it can be either an integer, a string, or a C that stands for expression. It's character, means expression. And the difference between these two is that this will be quoted, this will be not, essentially. Do you want any default values? You can add things in the condor vars file independently of putting anything in the dashboard file. So you could put something in the condor vars file and say, I want this to be set, and maybe some of the scripts later on will modify the file, but if they don't, use this default value. What should be the name of this key in the condor config? If you do a plus, it will just carry it over, or you can rename it. So you may use one name that you like internally, and when it gets to condor, it uses the proper condor name, which may be long. The famous enable sec password authentication, which is like this. We call it match auth, usually. It just is it required? If you put it to yes, and the condor is about to start, and it's not in the dashboard file, it will fail validation, essentially. It will die there. So it's an easy way to, if you want to do it into different scripts. In one, you actually define it, and then expect somebody else to do it. If they don't, you just fail. Should be exported to the class set, and this is yes or no. Anything that's in this file will go in the condor config, but only if this is set to yes, it will be advertised in the class set. And the last value is, should it be exported to the job environment? And you have actually three options here. If you put a minus, it's no, it will not be exported. If you do a plus, it will be exported with the key name. If you do what is called ampersand, it will use the condor name, since the two can be different. And there's no way to have yet a third name. You have to choose one of the two. Okay, it's an example how you would do that. For example, we here per se, well, we want GLEXEC bean to go in the condor file. It's an expression, no default. Actually, it's GLEXEC, what condor calls it. Yes, it's required. No, don't put it in the class set, and don't export it in the user environment. Then later on, we actually add the line in the dashboard. They said, oh, we have also GLEXEC job that we want to export. Again, it's an expression. Well, actually, we want to define the default. It's the same contour name. It's required, and it will be exported. And we don't put it in there for somebody else to do it. And then we have this GLSX temp that it's essentially a temp there, and we said, oh, this is a string, no default, save for condor. Yes, it's required. Yes, I want to export it in the environment, and yes, I want it to get the user environment, the class and the user environment. Just a couple of permutations of how we can do it. So, this is how you do things when things work. What do you do if your validation fails? In that case, you don't care about adding output and stuff like that in the dashboard file. The client is going away, so whatever you put in, it will be lost. You actually will not even be delivered back to the factory. You definitely want to execute error number different than 0, so that the processing of validation scripts actually stops there and the client ends. But please also print out an error message, because if you don't, all you get in the logs is validation script blah 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 failed. Done. Now what? So whenever you actually fail, print something out so that the people can act on it. It's very annoying when scripts fail and don't tell you why. And now a little bit of speculation. And Bert, this was not blessed by glideinWMS, so this is all in my head. So you know, it may or may not become like this. This speculation at this point, written up there.
You're free to do whatever you want between 2 and 2 in the morning.
So the current error codes and messages are completely arbitrary. So whatever comes out of validation scripts cannot be really acted on in an automatic way. It's usually good enough for manual debugging, but that's about it. There is no way we can do anything automated about it. So it would be nice to have some more structure. And there was a team in OSG that tried to get common output format for OSG. And I would like to build on it to actually standardize what the outputs of the validation scripts are. If you don't do it that way, we will have a reasonable default, but if you do, it would be nice. As I said, still speculation at this point. You can do it, but it will not be used. So in addition of exit code, the scripts would write out a status file that explains what happened in this validation script. And then this will be interpreted by the gliding startup script to do something about it, and possibly propagate it back to the factory to do some more intelligent decisions about it. So the first thing we need to know is if it succeeded or failed, of course, but in case it failed, what kind of failure it was. And we will need to agree on a set of standard error types. And this is just my 2-hour thinking about it. I'm not saying it's the final one, but for example, we could have something in the config went wrong. So, for example, there was an impossible combination of attributes. I asked you to disable UDP and use UDP for all the traffic. Doesn't make sense. So it would fail with the configuration errors. You may have a corruption error. Either this would be done automatically by the gliding startup, saying, oh, I tried to download the file, it failed with SHA-1 hash validation. Get correct corruption, but it may be something different. You could have downloaded the file, you run something on it, and you find an error in the file, something is wrong. You could say it was a corruption, it's probably my problem somewhere. Another obvious class would be worker not resource problem. For example, this is full or GLSX is not found. This is something that a site has to fix. There is no way I can do anything about it. That ticket will need to be opened with the site, because only they can fix it. It's a network problem. For example, I cannot talk to my VO collector. So this may not necessarily be a site problem, but it could be anywhere between the site and you. So you treat it differently than this full. Just because probably a different triage process will need to happen. Pretty frequent problem is the VO proxy. It's either expired or it cannot be validated or whatever. And we want to have that as a special example, because if we find that, we can fire up an automatic email to the VO admin. What the heck is going on with your proxies? It's not valid anymore. And the last one I can think of is VO data, which encompasses anything pretty much that you have pre-installed, for example, in the OSG app or OSG data, and when you try to look it up, it's not there. So this is in the VO domain. Probably, if I contact the site, they will not know what to do. I should first ask the VO if they know anything about it. And if you have other ideas of what would be reasonable error codes, I'm open to suggestions. Because, yeah, this is what I cooked up in a few hours, but haven't really thought through yet. And this is how the output would look. This is a good one. So essentially, standard header, status OK, and I have tested the disk space in this location, and yeah, I have enough disk space. So everything is nice and cozy. And here something went wrong. Oh, I failed. And the failure reason is VO proxy. I tried to check a proxy that was in this location and found that it had 12 hours left, and this is why I failed. So, still preliminary, still speculation, but just to get an idea what this would look like when we eventually get to it. And I would like to hear feedback if you think it's a good idea, bad idea, what do you like, what do you don't. Now, you know how to write a validation script now, hopefully. You have an idea, and what can you do with the validation scripts? So of course you can do proper validation, which is checking for obviously broken nodes. And this is essentially what I concentrated on right now. But that may not necessarily be the main thing. You may use it to discover and advertise dynamic information, do non-trivial configuration, and site-specific optimization, and I have slides for each of those. So, dynamic information. Some information you just don't know in advance. For example, where is my software located? Yes, I know it should be somewhere in OSGF, but it may not be the same on all the sites or whatever. There are different versions installed, stuff like that. So when I land on the worker, I actually want to discover it. Of course, the user could do that, but you may want this to do for the users and propagate in the environment something that's already pre-digested, so they don't have to. Moreover, you can fail if you don't find what you're looking for. It's dynamic, so yeah, you expect it to be in certain range, but if it's not in either any of those, you should fail, so the users don't. It just makes life easier for the users. And as I said, when you find something, it's good practice to actually advertise it, so the users already have the pre-digested information in it. They don't have to go through the same problems again, maybe with outdated code. So here's an example of pseudo code for what CMS could be using. Is CMS software defined? No, it's not defined. Fail. Tell I haven't found it. If I find it, try to source it. When I source it, did I actually find any versions? No. Oh, something is wrong. Even if the source files exist, it doesn't have the information I needed. So execute a different error message. It'd be nice to have a nice XML here. And then, once you get that information, just publish it. Same way we did before, and add it to the user environment. This one and this one. This is just advertised in the class app. This goes to the user environment because it's used for different reasons. Just like that. Another use of the so-called validation scripts, in this case are not really validation scripts, are just configuration scripts. You may want to generate some data on the fly. Two obvious things that come to mind is, yeah, let's let's create a random seed that the users can use, and let's do it at every gliding startup, just because it's nicer for whatever reason, and give it to the users. Another one is if you have something that's really long. For example, you need the list of, I know it's stupid, but just an example that can fit in 2 lines. You need something that is this long. You could put this long string in your XML file. Or you can write a tiny script that actually loops over it and creates it on demand the moment it runs. Yeah, this is much more compact than the other. And yeah, it's less error prone and easier to maintain. And then there are site-specific customization. Because currently in the front-end XML file, you really don't have a way to provide site-specific customization unless you want to have one group per site, which is possible, but if you have more than a handful of sites, it's a no-no. It's just too complicated. Another option is, if it's something obvious, ask the factory that means to provide it. For example, for CMS, the factory admins provide CMS site name. So essentially they get the site name from the CMS database when they add a new site and advertise it. If it is something simple that doesn't have to change often, you have a chance for the factory admins to say yes. If it's something that changes quite often, forget about it. You will never get it. It's just too much overhead. So it may or may not be a problem because maintenance is really problematic. So if you really need something like that, this is not an option, then you can write a per site configuration file where you have a long list of ifs, essentially, and you do a per site configurations. This works reasonably well if you just have to deal with a few exceptions, but I guess it will be pretty much unmanageable for a lot of sites, but there are no other alternatives right now. And if this is something that you think you need, we have now also Bert here, who is the glideinWMS project leader, and you can discuss with him what you need. These are things that you think it would be useful, and how important they are. Manpower is limited. So here is just an example of what can be done. As I said, the factory advertised something like called gliding CMS site, and in the 8 and 9 characters, we know it has encoded the country name, something like this. If this lands in the US, I define a variable called OSG. If it comes in Italy or France, it's AGI, or for everybody else, I don't care. And then I store this to the user environment. Not saying that this is what you would actually want to do, but this is what you can do if you really care about it. As promised, a few words about limitations. So whatever is discovered on the worker nodes, it's used by the script for their own testing, and at best it is propagated to the gliding class out or job environment if you decide so. However, nothing of this can be used for front-end matchmaking purposes, because it doesn't get in the factory classes, and only what gets in the factory classes can be used for the front-end matchmaking. At best you can use it for negotiation matchmaking, so it's better than nothing. As a result, you may be requesting glidings that will never run any user job because they will not match in the negotiator, because the front end thought the site was good, but the glidings are bad. So, we have the next slide. Yes. So, first of all, how do I notice that I have a problem? If you have validation errors, which means it fails straightforward, gliding doesn't start, the factor admins will likely find it, and if it is VO specific, they will contact you unenthusiastic on the job. So, not much you need to do. The factory admins should be doing their job, and at best you should say you're not doing a good job. This is really something the factory should be doing. The other part is that glidings do start, but put something in the negotiator configuration in the matchmaking doesn't work. You discovered, I don't know, that you have only 2 versions of the software on the worker node, but in the front that you were assuming you have much more, so glidings are flowing in because they match some jobs that require a version that is expected at the site, but then the site doesn't have it. The gliding starts up and then no match. This is your problem at this point. You have to debug it yourself. There is nothing we can do. You wrote the custom configuration, it's a problem. Now you discover the problem, what you can do? Well, obviously, if the script was faulty, you were over aggressive, or you have syntax error, or whatever is the reason, you should fix the script. But that's relatively rare. You can stop using the site if, at least maybe temporarily, that's a problem. Or the factory may blacklist the site if you ask them. That's another option. Or if it is more like this part, when it passes validation, but then jobs don't advertise anymore. Get generic enough information that is the same for all the glidings on the site, and convince the factory admins to actually advertise it in the factory class ads. They may say no, can say no if it's too dynamic, but they may say yes. So at least try. And if neither of these work, I don't know. You're stuck. But at least one of the 3 should work. Worst case, you just blacklist the site. And this is all I have.